I still remember the smell of rain that evening. It had been one of those long, exhausting days where the weight of life pressed down on me like a stone. The kind of day where all you want is to step through the front door and feel like you belong somewhere. Like someone is waiting for you, not because they have to, but because they want to. I tossed my keys on the counter, my shirt damp from the humidity outside. My mind already clouded with the usual thoughts, work deadlines, bills, responsibilities. But the moment I saw Lenora, sitting on the couch with her phone in one hand and a glass of wine in the other, something in my chest tightened. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me, just kept scrolling, her face illuminated by the cold glow of the screen. I hesitated. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "Long day?" She let out a sigh, one of those exasperated ones, the kind you give when someone is annoying you. "Not really." Silence. I waited, hoping she'd ask about my day. A simple, "How was work?" would have been enough. But she didn't. I dropped my bag by the door and walked to the kitchen, opening the fridge. I wasn't even hungry, but I needed something to do, something to fill the space between us. I glanced back at her. Still no reaction. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. When had we become this? I tried again. "You want me to make something for dinner?" This time, she looked up, her brows slightly furrowed like my question had somehow annoyed her. I already ate. My fingers tightened around the fridge handle. Not because she had eaten without me. I could live with that. It was the casual dismissal in her voice, the complete indifference. "Okay," I said slowly, closing the fridge. "You could have told me. I would have grabbed something on the way home." She shrugged. "Not my job to keep track of when you eat." It was a small thing. A minor comment, really. But something about the way she said it, so flat, so detached, made my stomach drop. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. I let out a short breath, keeping my voice steady. "I just meant." She cut me off. "Harlan, making you happy isn't my job." The words landed like a slap. I stood there, staring at her, my mind scrambling for some kind of response. I wasn't expecting a grand declaration of love. I wasn't asking for the world. Just something. Some indication that I mattered. But she just went back to scrolling. Like I wasn't even there. And that was the moment. The exact moment I stopped trying. I didn't argue. Didn't get angry. Something inside me just switched off. Because for the first time in years, I finally saw it for what it was. I had been holding on to something that wasn't there. So I walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Who was I doing all this for? The long hours, the stress, the sacrifices? If I wasn't important enough to even be acknowledged, then what was the point? That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a silent decision. If she didn't care, then neither would I. And the next morning, I showed her exactly what life looked like when I stopped caring. The next morning, something felt different. Not in the world around me, but inside me. It was as if some invisible thread that had been keeping me tethered to my marriage had finally snapped. I woke up, stared at the ceiling for a long time, and for once, I didn't feel the need to rush downstairs to check if Lenora needed anything. I didn't feel the usual pull to make her coffee, ask how she slept, or pretend like everything was fine. Instead, I just lay there, numb. By the time I finally got out of bed, the house was quiet. I expected to hear the familiar clinking of a spoon against a coffee mug or the hum of Lenora's morning playlist, but there was nothing. When I walked into the kitchen, she was sitting at the counter, phone in hand, one leg crossed over the other. She didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me. That was fine. I walked past her, grabbed a cup from the cabinet, and poured myself some coffee. No greeting, no forced attempt at small talk. Just silence. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fill it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her glance at me. It was brief, almost hesitant, as if she had noticed something was different. Maybe she expected me to act the way I always did, hovering around, asking about her plans for the day, making sure she was okay. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. She shifted in her seat. "You're up late." I took a slow sip of my coffee. Yep. A pause. I could tell she was waiting for me to say something else, but I didn't. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Finally, she sighed. "Do you need something?" That was rich. For years, I had been the one making sure she had everything she needed. And now, the second I stopped, she suddenly noticed my presence. I shook my head. Nope. Her lips pressed together like she wanted to say something, but instead, she went back to her phone. I finished my coffee in silence, then left the house without another word. Driving to work felt different that day. Lighter, somehow. I wasn't carrying the usual weight of worrying about whether Lenora was happy or if I was doing enough to make her feel loved. It was strange how quickly the burden lifted once I decided I wasn't going to be the only one holding up the marriage anymore. At work, I kept to myself. I focused on my tasks, avoided the usual lunchroom small talk, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't counting down the hours until I had to go home. In fact, when the clock hit 5, I didn't feel the need to rush out the door like I usually did. Instead, I took my time, finishing up some emails, letting the office empty out around me. When I finally got home, it was late. The house was dimly lit, and Lenora was sitting on the couch with the TV on low volume. She glanced up when I walked in, brows slightly raised. "You're late." I shrugged, kicking off my shoes. "Had stuff to do." She tilted her head slightly. "You never stay late." I smirked. "Guess I do now." For the first time in years, she didn't have a quick response. Instead, she just watched me, like she was trying to figure out what had changed. But I wasn't going to explain it to her. I just grabbed a beer from the fridge, sat down in the armchair across from her, and flipped through my phone. I didn't ask about her day. I didn't check if she had eaten. I didn't try to fill the silence. And for the first time, I could tell she felt it. That night, I went to bed without waiting for her. I didn't check if she was coming upstairs, didn't listen for the sound of her footsteps in the hallway. And when I woke up the next morning, I didn't reach for her side of the bed. The distance between us was growing, and I wasn't doing a damn thing to stop it. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for Lenora's approval. And she felt it. I can see it in the way she glanced at me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to say something, but stopped herself. The old me? He would have picked up on it immediately. He would have asked, "Is something wrong?" He would have adjusted, softened, done whatever was necessary to keep things running smoothly between us. But that man was gone, and Lenora was noticing. That morning, I left for work without a word. No, have a good day, no checking in on our plans. Just walked out the door. If she had something to say, she could say it first. At work, I was more productive than I had been in months. Without the constant stress of trying to decode my wife's moods, my head was clearer. For once, my energy was spent on things that actually mattered. I had lunch with some colleagues, something I usually skipped because I was too busy responding to Lenora's messages or rushing home. But today, I stayed. A woman from accounting, Marla, sat across from me in the cafeteria. I'd barely spoken to her before, but now, without my usual distractions, I noticed things. The way she smiled when she talked, the way she actually laughed at my terrible jokes. And for the first time in a long time, I enjoyed a conversation. Not once did I feel the need to check my phone. In fact, when I finally glanced at it, I saw 2 missed calls from Lenora. That was unusual. I ignored them. By the time I got home, the air between us had shifted. Lenora was in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "You didn't answer my calls." I set my bag down, unfazed. "I was busy." Her jaw clenched. "Too busy to text your wife back?" I tilted my head slightly, amused. "Ah, so she did notice." I shrugged. "Figured if it was important, you'd leave a message." Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't left a message. Just called. Repeatedly. As if, for the first time, she wasn't sure if I'd pick up. I could see it then, the flicker of something she'd never admit. The uncertainty. The loss of control. And that's when I realized something important. Lenora never expected me to stop trying. She had spent years knowing that no matter how distant she became, I would always close the gap. That I'd always be the one to fix things, to chase, to make sure our marriage didn't collapse under the weight of her indifference. But now? Now she was standing in a kitchen with a man she didn't quite recognize. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped the cap, and leaned against the counter. "Did you need something?" She blinked. "What?" "You called. Twice." I took a sip. "So, what was so important?" She shifted on her feet. I watched as she tried to come up with a reason, something that justified her need to reach me. But there was nothing. She hadn't had anything important to say. She just wanted to know where I was. For the first time in years, she was on the other side of the silence. I let that silence hang between us for a long moment before I pushed away from the counter. "I'm gonna shower." And just like that, I walked away. No explanation. No apology. No desperate attempt to fix something that, for once, wasn't my problem. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard her shifting beside me. Her breath's uneven, her body tense. And in that moment, I knew Lenora wasn't sleeping. She was thinking, wondering. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in our marriage, She was afraid to lose me. Something had changed. Not just in me, but in the air between us. It was subtle, almost unspoken, but it was there. I can see it in the way Lenora's eyes lingered on me longer than before, the way she seemed unsettled. She wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't reach out, who didn't smooth things over, who didn't make it his life's mission to keep her happy. And for the first time, I wondered if she even knew who she was without me constantly orbiting around her. That morning, I got dressed without a word. I took my time shaving, buttoning my shirt, adjusting my tie in the mirror. I had always been the type to rush in the mornings, making sure everything was in place, making sure she had what she needed. But today, I was taking my time for me. By the time I walked into the kitchen, she was already there, sitting at the counter with her phone. I half expected her to ignore me like she usually did, but instead, she looked up. "You're up early." I poured myself a cup of coffee, letting the silence stretch. "Yeah." A pause. She tapped her nails against the counter, something she only did when she was thinking too hard about something. "You got plans after work?" That was new. She had never cared about my schedule before. I smirked slightly, taking a sip of my coffee. "Why?" She shrugged. "Just wondering." I didn't answer. I just let the question hang there, unfinished, before setting my cup down and heading for the door. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't tell her when I'd be back. And when I glanced over my shoulder, I caught her watching me. The moment I stepped outside, I felt lighter, freer. And the best part? I wasn't faking it. At work, I found myself more engaged than ever. I accepted an invitation to grab lunch with some coworkers, a small thing, but one I would have turned down before. Lenora had always been weird about me spending too much time outside of our home, even though she never made an effort to actually be present when I was around. It was as if she wanted me there, but only in the background, like a piece of furniture she expected to always be in its place. Not anymore. That afternoon, Marla from accounting passed by my desk, flashing a smile. "Hey, Harlan. You free for coffee?" I hesitated, but only for a second. "Yeah, let's go." We sat at a quiet little spot a block from the office, the kind of place with shelves full of books and soft jazz playing in the background. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was actually interested in what I had to say. Marla laughed at my jokes. She leaned in when I spoke, her eyes bright, engaged. It was simple, easy, natural. And it made me realize just how exhausting my marriage had been. By the time I got home, it was late. The house was dimly lit, the air tense. Lenora was on the couch, legs curled up beneath her, her phone in her hand, but she wasn't scrolling. She was waiting. "You're late," she said, her voice carefully neutral. I shrugged. "Had plans." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "With who?" I smirked. "Does it matter?" For the first time in years, I had turned the tables. She was the one questioning me, the one feeling the weight of uncertainty. And damn, did it feel good. I walked past her, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. I didn't offer an explanation, didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing whether I had been with a woman, with friends, or just sitting alone at a bar. And that's when I saw it, the flicker of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Worry. She was worried. Because for the first time, she didn't know where I stood. And that, I realized, was something she had never had to deal with before. But now she would. The thing about change is that it creeps in quietly at first. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or grand declarations. It's in the small things, the way someone hesitates before speaking, the flicker of doubt in their eyes, the shift in energy when they enter a room. And Lenora? She felt it. It had been a few days since I stopped playing the role of the devoted husband. A few days since I stopped trying to be the one who always fixed things. And in that short time, the balance between us had started to shift. She wasn't used to it. The old me would have asked if she was okay, tried to soothe whatever invisible tension had crept between us. But that man was gone. I had spent years putting her feelings ahead of my own, but now, she was the one left wondering. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, flipping through my phone. I could feel her watching me, waiting for something, acknowledgement, conversation, maybe even confrontation. But I gave her nothing. She cleared her throat. "You didn't come to bed until late last night." I smirked, taking a slow sip. "Noticed that, huh?" She frowned slightly. "Yeah. Where were you?" I let the silence stretch between us before finally shrugging. "Out." It was a vague answer, intentionally so. The kind she had given me 100 times over the years when I asked about her plans, her late nights, her distracted mind. She shifted in her seat, clearly unsatisfied. Out where? I met her gaze, unreadable. Does it matter? The question hit its mark. I saw it in the way her lips pressed together, the way her fingers tightened slightly around her mug. Lenora had never had to wonder about me before. I had always been predictable, dependable, someone she could ignore without fear of consequence. But now, she didn't know where I stood. And that scared her. I stood, rinsed out my mug, and grabbed my keys. See you later. I could feel her eyes on my back as I walked out the door. The entire drive to work, I found myself smirking. Not out of cruelty, not out of some childish desire to make her jealous, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one waiting for answers. That day at the office, I let myself enjoy life a little more. I went out to lunch with Marlo again, listened to her talk about things that actually interested me. She had this way of making even the most mundane topics seem engaging. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't forcing a conversation. I wasn't thinking about Lenora. By the time I got home, it was late again. And just like before, Lenora was waiting. She was sitting on the couch, her phone resting on the coffee table, untouched. That was the first sign that something was different. Normally, she was glued to that thing, scrolling through social media, texting her friends, distracting herself. But now, she was focused on me. You're late again, she said. I kicked off my shoes, stretching. Busy day. She didn't move. With what? I smirked. Why do you care? That did it. Her jaw clenched, and for the first time in a long time, she looked frustrated. Maybe even angry. You're acting weird, she muttered. I laughed. Actually laughed. Am I? She stood up, arms crossing over her chest. Yes, you are. You're staying out late. You're ignoring my texts. She cut herself off, taking a breath. Are you trying to prove something? I tilted my head slightly, amused. Should I be? Silence. For the first time, she was the one at a loss for words. I walked past her, heading to the kitchen, grabbing a drink from the fridge. When I turned back, she was still standing there, arms crossed, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. And maybe she was. But it was too late for that now. Because the truth was, I had already seen who she was a long time ago. She just never thought I'd stop caring. It had been a week since I stopped being the man Lenora expected me to be. A week since I decided that if she didn't care about my happiness, then I wouldn't care about hers either. And in just those few days, the entire rhythm of our relationship had shifted. She felt it. I could see it in her posture, in the way she glanced at me with uncertainty, in the moments she hesitated before speaking. Lenora had never second-guessed herself before. She never had to. She was used to being in control, dictating the terms of our marriage without ever explicitly saying anything. For years, she had the luxury of knowing I would always be there, always bending to keep the peace, always making sure that she was comfortable. But now she was uncomfortable, and she didn't know why. I had spent years chasing after her approval, believing that if I just did enough, if I just proved my worth over and over again, she would eventually see me the way I once saw her. But that illusion was shattered now. And the funny thing? I wasn't even angry anymore. There was no resentment, no deep well of bitterness. Just clarity. That morning, I woke up early, showered, and dressed without a word. As I stepped out of the bathroom, Lenora was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep. She was never a morning person, but lately, I could tell she was waking up earlier just to see if I would say anything. If I would fall back into old patterns. I didn't. I grabbed my keys and wallet, slipped on my watch, and walked toward the bedroom door. As I reached for the handle, I heard her shift behind me. You're leaving early. I smirked to myself. She never used to notice things like that. Yeah, I said simply. A pause. Then, you've been out a lot this week. I turned, leaning against the doorframe. Have I? She pushed herself up slightly, her hair a mess from sleep, her expression guarded. Yeah. I waited, curious to see if she'd follow it up with something. Maybe an accusation, maybe a question. But she didn't. She just sat there, watching me, waiting for an answer I wasn't going to give. So I just nodded. See you later. And then I left. It was almost laughable how quickly the dynamic had changed. Lenora had spent years being emotionally distant, barely acknowledging me unless it served her in some way. But the moment I stopped catering to her, she suddenly had all these questions. Suddenly, she was paying attention. I didn't rush to check my phone throughout the day. I didn't go home immediately after work. I lived my life as if I was single, not in the sense of being with other women, but in the sense that I wasn't tethered to anyone else's expectations. I went to the gym after work, something I hadn't done in years. I grabbed dinner on my own, enjoying the silence instead of sitting across from a woman who barely looked up from her phone. And when I finally walked through the front door that evening, Lenora was sitting on the couch, legs curled up beneath her, her eyes locking onto me the second I stepped inside. "You didn't answer my text." I dropped my keys onto the counter. "Didn't see it." Her jaw tightened. "It was hours ago." I shrugged. "Must have been busy." Her fingers drummed against her knee. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to feeling like an afterthought. She wasn't used to being the one left in the dark. And that's when I realized something. She never thought she would have to work for my attention. Lenora had built an entire marriage around the idea that I was the one chasing her, that I was the one who needed to keep proving myself. She had spent years taking me for granted, assuming that no matter what she did or didn't do, I would always be waiting. But now I wasn't. And for the first time, she felt it. The real question was, what was she going to do about it? It was funny, really. For years, I had been the one trying to keep everything together. The one who made compromises, swallowed my frustrations, and convinced myself that love meant endurance. That if I just held on long enough, if I kept proving my worth, she would eventually see me. But now I was watching Lenora fall apart, piece by piece, and I wasn't lifting a damn finger to stop it. The change in her was almost imperceptible at first. Little things, glances that lingered too long, an edge of hesitation in her voice. But then, those little things became something bigger. That morning, I was standing in the bathroom, shaving, when I saw her in the mirror. She had woken up earlier than usual, slipping into the doorway, watching me. I didn't acknowledge her right away, just kept moving the razor along my jaw, focused on my reflection. "You're different," she finally said. I rinsed the blade, set it down on the sink. "Yeah." She nodded. "You don't talk as much." I smirked. "Didn't think you cared." She bristled, arms folding across her chest. "That's not fair." I turned, finally meeting her gaze. "Isn't it?" For years, this was how she had treated me, like I was background noise. Like my thoughts, my feelings, my presence didn't really matter. And now that the roles had reversed, she was uncomfortable. But I didn't feel sorry for her. She let out a slow breath. "Are you mad at me?" I tilted my head slightly, considering that. "No," I said finally. "I'm just done." Her eyes flickered. "Done with what?" "With chasing." That word hung between us, heavy, undeniable. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Lenora had spent years being the one in control, deciding the pace of our relationship, dictating the emotional distance. But for the first time, she had no control over me, and she didn't know what to do with that. I grabbed my jacket and brushed past her, leaving her standing in the doorway. At work, I didn't think about her. Not even once. Instead, I found myself texting Marla. It wasn't anything inappropriate. Just casual, easy conversation. She sent me a meme about coffee, and I laughed. Actually laughed, something I hadn't done in a long time. We ended up grabbing lunch again. And for once, I enjoyed someone's company without feeling like I had to prove anything. By the time I got home, it was dark. Lenora was in the kitchen, staring at her phone, but when she heard the door close, she looked up, too quickly. She had been waiting. I didn't say anything. Just walked past her, grabbed a beer from the fridge. "You're late," she said. I twisted the cap off, took a sip. "Yeah." A pause. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for something. Anger, frustration, jealousy. But she wouldn't find it. Because I wasn't playing this game anymore. She set her phone down, crossing her arms. "I feel like I don't even know what's going on with you anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "That's ironic." Her expression darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smirked. "You never asked before." Silence. She swallowed, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I don't understand what's happening between us." I shrugged. "That makes two of us." She let out a frustrated breath, running a hand through her hair. "Are you trying to push me away?" That made me laugh, actually laugh. She thought this was my doing. I shook my head, finishing my beer. "I didn't push you away, Lenora." I placed the empty bottle on the counter, looking her in the eyes. "You walked away first." I just stopped following. Her face paled slightly, her breath hitching. For the first time, she finally understood. She had spent years pulling away, believing I would always be there, that I would always chase, always fight for her attention. But now, there was nothing left to fight for. And she felt it. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard her shifting beside me. She was awake, restless, because for the first time in our marriage, she was afraid to lose me. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because anything grand had happened overnight, but because something deep inside me had settled. A quiet understanding. A truth I had been avoiding for far too long. Lenora was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Her back was stiff, her fingers laced together in her lap. She looked small, uncertain, like she had been up all night wrestling with something she didn't know how to fix. I sat up, stretching, waiting to see if she'd say something first. She did. "Harlan," she murmured, her voice softer than I had heard in a long time. "I don't like this." I ran a hand over my face. "Don't like what?" "This," she gestured vaguely between us. "Whatever's happening. I don't know how we got here." I let out a slow breath, nodding to myself. "I do." She glanced at me, searching my face. "Then tell me." I met her gaze, not with anger or resentment, but with the truth. "We got here because I spent years trying to be enough for you, and you never even noticed. And when I finally stopped trying, you didn't know what to do." Her breath hitched. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I stood up, grabbing a pair of jeans from the chair. "And the thing is, Lenora, I don't think you ever really wanted me to stop chasing you. You liked knowing I was always there, always reaching, always hoping." She swallowed, her fingers tightening in her lap. "That's not true." I smiled, but it wasn't bitter. Just knowing. "Yeah, it is." Silence. For the first time, she had nothing to say, and I realized I didn't need her to. Because for the first time in years, I was free. I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't carrying the weight of trying to fix something that had been broken for a long time. And that was when I knew it was over. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder. "I think we both deserve better than this." Lenora looked up, her eyes wide. "Harlan." I shook my head. "No, I'm not saying this to hurt you. I finally see things clearly." I exhaled, rubbing the back of my neck. "We've been drifting apart for a long time, Lenora. And I think we both knew it. I was just the last one to accept it." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue, because she knew I was right. I walked toward the door, stopping just before I stepped out. "I really did love you, you know." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I know." And then I left. Not in anger, not in sadness, but in peace. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was finally choosing myself.